For over 4 decades, Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell defied Hollywood norms, staying deeply in love without ever tying the knot. Fans always wondered why. Now, at 77, Goldie is finally breaking her silence, revealing a truth more personal and more powerful than anyone imagined. And it changes everything we thought we knew. The public fairy tale that wasn't so perfect behind the scenes. From the outside, the relationship between Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell looked like something straight out of a storybook. Ever since they got together in 1983, the public saw them as Hollywood's golden couple, raising children, walking red carpets arm in arm, and starring in beloved films like Overboard. There were no cheating scandals, no public meltdowns, no courtroom divorces, just laughter, chemistry, and decades of togetherness. But now, at 77, Goldie is finally saying what fans never knew. The fairy tale had cracks. For years, people wondered why they never tied the knot. Goldie and Kurt looked like they had it all. So why no wedding? She now admits the truth was far more complicated than anyone guessed. Behind the glowing magazine covers and the red carpet smiles were real tensions, and many of them centered around the same question everyone kept asking: why aren't you married? There were times when it felt like we were being pushed into something we didn't want, Goldie shared in a recent interview. We weren't broken, but people wanted us to act like we needed fixing. Tabloids in the 1990s were relentless. After their rise in popularity as a couple, particularly following Overboard's success, every press junket, interview, and appearance came with a loaded question. When's the wedding? Studios encouraged it. Publicists pitched it. Networks even offered millions for exclusive wedding rights. And through it all, Goldie said no. But that defiance came at a cost. She and Kurt often found themselves arguing, not about love, but about pressure. She recalls heated moments about parenting decisions, how much time they were spending apart due to work, and most of all, her fear of losing herself. Goldie openly admits she felt anxiety creeping in every time the word marriage came up. It wasn't about Kurt, it was about me. I was afraid that if I said I do, I'd disappear. She loved her independence. She had built a career on her terms, raised her kids as a single mom before Kurt came along, and carved out a life that didn't revolve around being someone's wife. The idea of giving that up, even for a man she loved, terrified her. I didn't want to be a wife, she said. I wanted to be me, with someone who loved me as I was. And Kurt? He respected it, but that didn't stop the world from judging. The tabloids spun stories, rumors flew, critics said they were just afraid of commitment. Friends asked if something was wrong. And yet, through it all, Goldie stood firm, even as she quietly struggled to hold her own fears in check. Looking back now, she says the real secret wasn't the love they shared. It was the battles they fought behind the scenes to protect that love from being reshaped by outside expectations. We didn't need a wedding to prove anything, she says, but we did need strength to keep saying no when everyone wanted us to say yes. But Goldie's resistance to marriage didn't start with Kurt, or even with Hollywood's pressure. The truth runs much deeper, into the shadows of her own past. And as she opens up about the emotional scars left behind by 2 failed marriages, it becomes clear that her decision was never just about today. It was about protecting herself from a pain she never wanted to relive. Goldie's painful past with marriage scarred her forever. Before Kurt Russell ever entered her life, Goldie Hawn had already been to the altar twice, and both times it ended in heartbreak. Now, at 77, she admits that those past experiences shaped how she saw love, trust, and most of all, marriage itself. Her first marriage to Gus Trichonis began when she was still rising as a young star. The two met in the 1960s and stayed together for nearly a decade, but it wasn't a union filled with joy. Goldie says that while there wasn't dramatic betrayal, there was something worse: emptiness. The emotional distance between them only widened as her fame grew, and she began to feel like a guest in her own relationship. "I felt unseen," she says, "like I was just performing, on screen, and at home." But it was her second marriage, to musician Bill Hudson, that left the deepest wounds. At first, it was passionate. They had 2 children, Kate and Oliver Hudson, and for a while, things looked promising. But behind closed doors, there were cracks forming fast. Goldie now reveals that Bill's infidelity, control issues, and resentment of her success slowly broke her down. "He couldn't handle my independence," she said, "and I couldn't keep pretending I was okay." Their divorce in 1980 turned ugly. The custody battle was bitter, and the emotional toll was severe. Bill accused her of being a bad mother. She accused him of manipulation. Lawyers became mediators. Friends took sides. And through it all, Goldie says she began to associate marriage with entrapment, a beautiful ceremony that could lead straight into a legal battlefield. So when Kurt Russell entered her life just a few years later, she was already guarded. "I loved him," she says, "but I was scared. Marriage didn't mean commitment to me. It meant contracts, lawyers, and heartbreak." Even when Kurt proved himself kind, loyal, and patient, Goldie couldn't let go of the fear that one day marriage would turn them into enemies. She had seen too much, loved too deeply, lost too painfully. And though she adored Kurt, she couldn't imagine putting that kind of power into a legal document ever again. Marriage was supposed to be about love, she reflected. But all I saw was what came after. At 77, Goldie sees her decision not as rebellion, but as self-preservation. She says staying unmarried allowed her to stay whole. "I didn't need a ring to feel loved," she said. "I needed to feel safe. And Kurt gave me that, without ever asking me to sign anything." But their love wasn't just built on fear or past pain. It was built on understanding, too. And in the next chapter of their story, we'll see how Kurt Russell's surprising agreement to stay unmarried became the most powerful act of devotion he ever gave her. A soundtrack of sorrow, the scene that triggered a breakdown. Julie Andrews twirling through the hills in The Sound of Music looks effortless, but it was anything but. That iconic scene was filmed over 6 brutal mornings, with a helicopter's downdraft knocking her down again and again. She was cold, dizzy, and emotionally drained. "I must have fallen over a dozen times," she later revealed. But no one saw that. All they saw was the twirl. By day 3, she broke down in tears between takes, not just from exhaustion, but from deep personal grief. "I was performing joy while living grief," she said. Julie was struggling with fame, questioning whether the world still wanted her, or just Maria. During emotional scenes like Edelweiss, she couldn't stop crying. The crew thought she was acting. She wasn't. Privately, she was mourning her growing distance from her daughter, her failing marriage, and her fading sense of self. The only comfort came from a small gift, a music box that played My Favorite Things. Julie clutched it each night. "The hills weren't alive with music," she later confessed. They were alive with echoes of everything I was losing. Yet somehow, she delivered magic on screen, while quietly falling apart behind it. The Unspoken Rift, with Christopher Plummer. To the world, Julie Andrews and Christopher Plummer were the perfect pair. But behind the scenes of The Sound of Music, their bond was anything but warm. Plummer famously mocked the film, calling it The Sound of Mucus. His coldness cut deep. Yes, there was tension, Julie later admitted. And yes, it hurt. Plummer challenged directors, rewrote lines, and kept Julie at arm's length. She was emotionally raw. He offered no comfort. During the ballroom dance scene, he reportedly whispered a sarcastic remark just before cameras rolled. Julie's startled reaction made the final cut. She believed he resented her fame. "I think he felt eclipsed," she said, fresh off her Mary Poppins success. At a cast dinner, he joked about her being Disney's singing nanny turned nun. Julie left early and didn't return smiling. Still, one moment cracked the ice. During the wedding scene, the music moved him. He took her hand, just once. For a second, he was the captain, and I was Maria. But it didn't last. When Plummer died in 2021, Julie mourned quietly. "We were friends," she said, but inside, she grieved a more complicated loss, of a man who mirrored her own loneliness during a defining moment in her life. The scene that almost broke her lies behind the hilltop magic. That breathtaking shot of Julie Andrews spinning on an alpine hill in The Sound of Music became legendary. But behind the magic was pure misery. For 8 mornings in 1964, Julie was flown by helicopter to a remote location to film one perfect take. Each day brought freezing wind, soaking rain, and brutal falls. 9 in total. The helicopter's downdraft knocked her over again and again. Her ankles bruised, voice hoarse, and nerves fraying, she kept spinning. "I smiled through gritted teeth," she later confessed. Once she slipped and rolled down the hill, narrowly missing sharp rocks. No one checked on her. They just wanted the perfect shot. The take used in the final cut? Day 7. The only morning the sun hit the hill just right. Privately, Julie was furious. She felt less like an actress and more like a product. "Each spin hurt more than the last," she wrote. Even co-star Christopher Plummer noticed she was unraveling behind that mountain smile. At 89, Julie revealed the truth. Her right knee still aches from that hill. "People saw joy," she said, "but I left a piece of myself up there." That hill wasn't just beautiful. It was war-torn ground. Christopher Plummer's hidden battle, and their real off-screen bond. The chemistry between Julie Andrews and Christopher Plummer in The Sound of Music was so magnetic that fans have speculated for decades whether the two shared a romantic connection off-screen. But Julie, now 89, has finally set the record straight. While their on-screen romance captivated the world, their real relationship was far more complicated and far more profound. Julie admitted that Plummer was fighting demons of his own during the 1964 shoot. He struggled with alcohol, loneliness, and resentment over being cast in what he initially saw as a saccharine musical. And it was Julie, not the producers, who helped keep him grounded through the chaos of production. During long nights in Salzburg, Plummer would often find solace in Julie's company. They would sit in quiet corners of their hotel or take walks near the lake, not as lovers, but as two lost souls trying to survive a production that was breaking them down emotionally. Julie described their bond as fierce and intimate, but never romantic. She acknowledged that while rumors swirled for years about their supposed affair, they never crossed that line. He was married. I was married. But more than that, we respected each other's pain. In a rare handwritten note dated August 1964, Plummer wrote to her, "You are the stillness in my storm." That note, which Julie kept for over 60 years, was shown for the first time during her 2025 memoir release. What few knew is that Plummer was almost fired during week 3 of filming. After an argument with director Robert Wise over the portrayal of Captain Von Trapp, Plummer disappeared for 36 hours. Julie was the one who convinced him to return, reminding him of the artistry behind the film, even if it didn't match his usual dramatic fare. "She saved the movie," the producer once said. "If she hadn't gotten him back, we'd have recast." That act of quiet loyalty bound them for life. When Plummer passed away in 2021, Julie said, "It felt like losing a part of myself, because I never got to say goodbye the way I wanted." Julie revealed in 2025 that she never told Plummer how much he meant to her, not as a co-star, but as a mirror of her own hidden sorrow. "We were both pretending for the cameras, hiding our bruises, our heartbreak, our regrets," she said. "But when the camera stopped rolling, we were just two people who understood each other in a way no one else ever would." That bond remained untouched by gossip, but profoundly real beneath the surface. Their last conversation, which Julie now treasures like a relic, wasn't about fame, legacy, or awards. It was about the mountains of Salzburg, and how those hills still echoed with a song only the two of them truly heard. Today, Julie keeps a framed photo of them in her study. Not a still from the film, but a candid shot of the two laughing between takes, mud on their shoes and exhaustion in their eyes. "That's the real memory," she whispered in a recent interview. "Not the kiss, not the music, just that moment when we knew we weren't alone." The rumor of behind-the-scenes jealousy wasn't entirely fiction. For decades, whispers circulated among Hollywood insiders about a tension brewing between Julie Andrews and some of her co-stars on the set of The Sound of Music. While the film exuded harmony, several reports from the mid-1960s suggested that Andrews, then just 29, was caught in subtle friction with her younger co-stars, and even Christopher Plummer, who famously played Captain Von Trapp. These rumors intensified following a 1966 interview where Plummer called the film too saccharine and referred to working on it as like being trapped in a marshmallow. Though his remarks were later softened, insiders at 20th Century Fox admitted privately that the chemistry on screen came at a price behind the scenes. Andrews remained silent for over 50 years, never publicly addressing these claims, until her shocking memoir edition in 2023, when she finally conceded that there was an undercurrent of discomfort between some cast members, including Plummer, during filming in Salzburg, Austria. She wrote that, at the time, she was still grieving the loss of her first husband, Tony Walton, and juggling the pressures of newfound fame after her Oscar-winning role in Mary Poppins the year before. The weight of expectation from the studio, combined with the harsh Austrian winter of 1964, created what she described as emotional iciness behind the bright musical scenes. These words confirmed that the fairy tale production was not without its shadows. Adding to the mystery, Heather Menzies, who played Louisa Von Trapp, once alluded in a 1999 interview to a scene being delayed due to silent disagreements between cast members. According to Menzies, Julie felt protective over the film's tone and was frustrated by Plummer's initial refusal to sing parts of his role, despite it being a musical. Studio logs from December 1964 confirm a multi-day halt in production around the same time a critical duet scene was scheduled. Andrews now admits that she advocated hard for certain musical elements to be preserved, calling it a creative difference, but one I don't regret. In truth, her commitment to musical integrity was unwavering. She believed the songs would outlast the visuals. History proved her right. In a documentary released in 2021, Plummer himself, before his death in February 2021, admitted that he had been young and foolish during the shoot. Andrews reflected on this in her memoir by saying, "Chris and I grew very close in the later decades. Time softens what ego once hardened." Their friendship, which blossomed in the 1990s and lasted until Plummer's death at 91, became one of the most heartwarming evolutions from a movie pairing often misconstrued. By confirming the tension was real, but short-lived, Julie Andrews, at age 89, finally cleared the air about what had become one of Hollywood's longest swirling whispers: the mysterious vault footage and what it revealed. One of the most persistent legends surrounding the sound of music involves so-called vault footage, scenes shot but never released, rumored to contain moments that would shatter the clean image of the iconic film. For decades, fans speculated about what was hidden in the 20th Century Fox archives, often pointing to production memos from November 1964 that mentioned a cut scene involving Maria and the children in a snowstorm. In 2022, a retired editor named Paul Henning, who had worked on the film, gave an interview confirming that there were indeed over 3 hours of alternate takes, bloopers, and darker scenes locked away in Fox's studio vaults. Among them, he claimed, was a raw take of Julie Andrews breaking down in tears after a scene was reshot 6 times due to weather and exhaustion. This revelation sent fans into a frenzy, especially since Andrews had always projected strength and grace, even under pressure. But during her 89th birthday tribute in October 2024, she stunned the audience by addressing the rumor head-on. In a pre-recorded message played at the tribute gala in Los Angeles, Andrews said, "There is footage of me breaking, not as Maria, but as Julie. It was a hard winter. I was barely 30. I had a toddler. I was human." The confirmation floored those in attendance. Dick Van Dyke, her longtime friend, reportedly had tears in his eyes as the clip played, breaking the illusion that Andrews had been untouchable. Andrews later elaborated in an interview with BBC Radio in early 2025, explaining that the vault footage was never meant to be hidden to protect anyone. It was standard for unused emotional takes to be shelved. However, she admitted that seeing it recently during a private screening was like seeing a ghost. Her daughter, Emma Walton Hamilton, encouraged her to speak publicly, saying that vulnerability made her even more legendary. For Andrews, it was a turning point. She had spent most of her life keeping parts of herself tucked away, just like those reels of forgotten film. But now, nearing 90, she had nothing to lose and everything to gain by telling the truth. This revelation sparked renewed demand for the vault footage to be made public, with fans launching online petitions in late 2024. But Fox, now under Disney's ownership, declined to comment on its release. Still, the clip of Julie's breakdown aired during the tribute special left a lasting impression. It wasn't the tears that stunned fans, it was the fact that Andrews, even in collapse, was authentic. In her most vulnerable moment, she still radiated the strength that made Maria von Trapp iconic. That scene, once buried, is now a symbol, not of a woman failing, but of a woman holding everything together when no one noticed how heavy it had become. The footage has yet to be officially released, But its mere confirmation shifted the way generations now see Julie Andrews. What was once considered a myth is now part of her living truth. At age 89, she's no longer just the woman who sang through Austrian hills. She's the woman who weathered them, too. Julie's private pain. The day her voice broke on set. For millions, Julie Andrews' voice was a symbol of perfection. A voice that echoed through generations. But few knew the weight she carried while filming The Sound of Music. Behind the pristine vocals and flawless delivery was a woman on the verge of collapse. One particularly brutal day, during the filming of Climb Every Mountain, Julie's voice cracked. Not metaphorically, literally. The high-altitude Austrian air, paired with long hours and immense pressure from 20th Century Fox producers, had strained her cords beyond their limit. The note didn't come out, and everyone, cast, crew, director, froze. The scene was halted. Julie left the set in tears. It wasn't just physical. The emotional toll of balancing motherhood, international fame, and a controlling studio system had drained her. She hadn't seen her daughter for 3 weeks. Her then-husband, Tony Walton, was dealing with personal issues back in the States. Julie was alone, far from home, trying to embody a joyful, nun-turned governess, while privately battling anxiety and exhaustion. The world would never guess it, but Julie had begun to question whether she was cut out for this life. Her diary from that time, now publicly released, reveals her deep insecurities. "I fear I've reached my ceiling. Am I only Maria because people want to believe I'm perfect?" Director Robert Wise reportedly had to pause filming for 2 full days after that breakdown. Rumors swirled that Julie might quit the film altogether, and that Shirley Jones was on standby to step in. But Andrews refused to walk away. Instead, she pushed through, with vocal rest, therapy, and sheer force of will. That moment, though hidden from fans for decades, changed her forever. It was the first time she realized that the icon the world adored might cost her more than she ever expected. That painful moment in Austria would become a turning point, not just in Julie's career, but in her entire identity. But even greater heartbreak awaited her decades later, when fate did what critics and scandal never could. It stole her voice entirely. And that silence, more than any rumor, haunted her. The final truth: why Julie guarded the secret for 60 years. Julie Andrews' voice was her signature, her superpower. But in 1997, a routine vocal surgery left her with permanent damage, her beloved soprano gone forever. Fans were heartbroken, but few knew that this tragedy had roots that traced all the way back to The Sound of Music. The strain she endured during that production, the endless takes in high altitudes, the pressure to sing even while sick, all of it left lasting trauma. For decades, Julie avoided discussing it publicly, not because she was ashamed, but because she didn't want to tarnish the legacy of the film that defined her. Now, at 89, Julie has finally confessed the full extent of her pain. In a new interview, she revealed that her vocal cords had been fraying since the late 60s, but she kept quiet. "I felt like I owed the world a voice, and I was terrified of losing it," she shared. The studio execs knew about the early damage, but they pushed her anyway, fearing that delaying production would risk the film's release date. Julie stayed silent, fearing she'd be labeled difficult or ungrateful. But more than that, she felt the weight of generations who saw Maria as a beacon of joy and purity. Julie didn't want her struggles to shatter that illusion. It wasn't until her granddaughter asked her, "Was it all really that perfect?" that she finally realized the importance of truth over legacy. That's when she decided to speak, not for scandal, but for healing. Her story isn't about bitterness. It's about honesty, survival, and the high cost of becoming an icon. Today, Julie embraces the silence as a new form of voice. In her memoir and public appearances, she channels strength through storytelling. And now the world finally sees not just Maria the character, but Julie the human, flawed, heroic, and brave enough to rewrite the ending on her own terms. Julie Andrews kept her silence out of love for the fans, the film, and the legend she helped create. But now, her truth has become a new kind of music. It may not be sung from a mountaintop, but its echo may just be the most powerful sound of all. Goldie Hawn didn't need a ring to prove her love. She needed freedom, honesty, and a partner who valued both. Her story isn't just about romance. It's about choosing yourself while still choosing someone else. And after all these years, she's shown us that sometimes the strongest bond is the one you don't sign.